let us introduce Alina Siegfried. Hi, Alina.
Hello.
Hello. Good to see you. So, um, I just wanted to mention that you're a poet and spoken word artist. And with that, I just want to give the word over to you.
Kia ora, thank you, Roy. And thank you, Carolina. And hello to everybody. I'm calling in this morning. It's my morning from Wellington, New Zealand, which I understand is probably a long way away from the majority of you. And it's wonderful to be here. I've been following the System Change Alliance for some time and very much a fan of the work. So yes, I'm here to talk to you today around story and narrative to support systemic change, and we have an interactive workshop session today with the opportunity for you all to explore some new and old narratives around local economies. And then afterwards, I'll be doing a few of my spoken word pieces in a performance, as I understand it, to close out the conference. So I'm going to begin by telling you a little bit about me. I'm going to do that. I'll start my presentation first, actually, and then I'll jump into it. So essentially, what we're talking about with all of this conference is systems change in the basket of local economies. And the way I see it, systems change really at the root of it is cultural change. It's change around the anthropogenic systems that we have built and the way that we interact with the natural systems around us. And at the root of any culture, what we have built the foundations of our cultures on is really story and narrative and myth. It is humans who've made up the operating systems of our world. And thus it is us who can change it. Systems change really is, many of you will be familiar with this diagram here. And it really outlines what is required for true systemic change to come about. And you'll see at the top level there are all the very structural, more tangible or obvious elements of systems change, the policies, the practices and resource flows. So this is where you see things like social enterprise or philanthropy and the resource flows, or practices like corporate social sustainability and governance and so on. And of course, economic policies and social policies, very much the very explicit stuff that you can see day to day. A level down, you've got relational change, and that's where we see we're seeing a little bit more movement in that space between relationships and connections with movements like Black Lives Matter, or conversations around the Me Too movement around different shifting power dynamics, and what roles those play. But at the very bottom there, you've got transformative change, and that's very much around the mental models around how we think about the way the world is. And it's very much at these bottom two levels, the semi-explicit and the implicit, that I work at as a narrative strategist and as a storyteller for systems change. Now, I think I've actually skipped a slide. I'm just going to go up a couple to see if I can find, here it is, yes. I'm going to go back a couple of moments. In Aotearoa, New Zealand here, it's traditional to introduce yourselves with a Māori welcome, a mihi mihi as such, that describes your connection to the land and how we came to be here. So I'm going to go into this first before proceeding any further. I'll translate in a moment. Ko mako tere te maunga, ko waimakarere te awa, ko Cressy, ko SS Australis, ngā waka, ko Witihana, ko Pākehā, ngā iwi, ko Alina Siegfried tako ingoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So what I've done just now is grounded myself in relationship with the lands that I'm doing my work upon, and also introduced myself to you in terms of both my natural and human ancestors. So you've got a picture there of Maukatari, or Mount Grey, as it was the colonizers called it, down in the Canterbury region of New Zealand, which is where my mother's side of the family first settled, along with the Waimakarere River. And you've got images there of both the Cressy and the SS Australis, which by way of my father and my mother's side of the family came to Aotearoa, New Zealand. And then I just introduced myself and said greetings to one and all of you. Great, thank you. So I'm going to skip a couple of slides ahead again now, because I was ahead of myself a moment ago. So yes, going back to the place where I work, in that implicit transformative place of change. Really, humans are hardwired for story. That's the operating system that our brains are built upon. We may think in this modern day and age that we have, us clever humans have triumphed above the natural world, or that we have figured everything out, and that we are rational, clever creatures. But really, it is story that hits to our hearts and moves us to action much more readily than facts and figures. So stories build bridges between different people towards shared meaning and understanding things, understanding a complex world in a way that we can agree on. They demonstrate our values in action and tell other people what we are about, really. And again, they really work at that implicit level, hitting hearts over minds, and convincing people much more readily than say reports or facts or figures. I think Maya Angelou summarizes it very aptly here with this quote, that people will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they won't forget how you made them feel. And for me, that sums up exactly what story does, is it makes us feel something and understand something innately inside. So to just look at the DNA of really what I'm talking about when I'm talking about story in the world of systems change, if we want to flip the triangle on its head here, really I see at the very foundations of our culture is myth, and I use the word here, myth, as in a sort of a narrative that holds a seed of truth, and it really is most of the time very much unspoken and assumed. And it's a close cousin of narrative, the way I see it. And you might hear me sometimes speak about mythic narratives. And narratives in this sense, I'm speaking about the assumptions that we have about the way the world is. So the assumptions that we have around the role of the economy, or the role of money, or the role of productive work, and how that interacts with our economies and with our societies. At the level above that, you've got the more explicit stories that people are familiar with. Those are the tales with the beginning, middle, end, the tangible things where there's characters involved, and it's a little more subjective. And at the very tip of the iceberg, but also incredibly important, is the role of framing and language, and exactly how you tell a story, and how you describe the characters, and how you describe all the different moving parts of the system, and whether it's really, what the goals. Framing and language is where it really comes out what the goals of the story that you're trying to tell are. And we see that a lot, of course, in the realm of politics and media, when any given story can be cut perhaps 100 different ways. That's where framing and language is, of course, makes all the difference.